International public notice regarding the dead baby scam. August 8, 2019 by Anna von Reitz. Following the American Civil War, the British Territorial Government took over under the pretext of providing us with a military protectorate, based on their constitutional contract to provide a mutual defense for our states of the Union. Mr. Lincoln left them the Lieber Code to administer, basically, instructions for what they were supposed to do and how they were supposed to conduct themselves, and over time, that morphed into the Hague Conventions. The next day Lincoln bankrupted the northern states of the original Confederacy. And here we've sat ever since, left in the dark and fed horse chunks, under reconstruction, purportedly awaiting the day when our states would reconstruct the states of America and issue new federal states of states, while our states have been lulled to sleep and reassured that all is well and not made aware of any purported necessity to reconstruct anything left over from a 150-year-old foreign commercial mercenary war. In point of fact, our states are under no obligation to reconstruct the Confederation of States (DBA) States of America, and are potently capable of exercising every power ever delegated to the Confederation. Our states of the Union were never involved in the Civil War. By definition, our states were never bankrupted, either, and our holding company, the United States of America, has never ceased to function. Thanks to guile, betrayal, self-interest, and breach of trust by both the Queen and the Pope, we have been bubbling along, deliberately left unaware of the external circumstance and all the many, many lies that these subcontractors have been telling the world about us, and the false claims they have been making against us and our assets ever since. To expedite and institutionalize their cozy, special relationship, the perpetrators have established the dead baby scam, a throwback to earlier outlawed practices of the so-called Holy Roman Empire. Admission of their corruption can be viewed on the televised London Winter Olympics footage, which shows those responsible parading in hooded robes around the giant effigy of a dead baby, much to the amazement and consternation of the rest of the world, which was left wondering. Now you know that that weird procession involved a sealing ceremony, in which they hope to consecrate their spellbinding, also known as fraud, against the American states and people and most of the rest of the world, too. The British Territorial Government, operating its bogus perpetual military protectorate on our shores, conscripted our doctors, nurses, dentists, and other health professionals as uniformed officers. See their Federal Title 37. They then licensed those ersatz officers and, under duress of not being able to practice their professions, misdirected them to do something very peculiar in hospitals throughout our country. They were to admit the fetal afterbirth material, amnion, resulting from each natural birth process as a dying person to the hospital record, and use whatever given names our parents provided as the name of the amnion. As a result, all our mothers were admitted as patients and gave birth to a dead person, carrying our given names. There is no record of us being present at all. This fraudulent genocide on paper was then used to excuse the creation of trusts by the municipal United States government. The British Territorial Government held the equitable, beneficial title to these trusts created and operated in our names, and the municipal United States government held the legal title to them. The municipal government additionally created many other incorporated entities, public transmitting utilities, public charitable trusts, LLCs, joint ventures, etc., all operated in our names. This is an identity theft scheme of staggering proportions carried out against individual living Americans for the purpose of accessing our credit and confiscating our assets under color of law. No wonder the British perpetrators were marching around their effigy of a dead baby, mumbling their incantations in hopes that we would all remain asleep and never, ever figure out what was going on. But we have figured it out, and we are not happy with our subcontractors. In fact, we consider it a gross criminal breach of trust, and we demand immediate corrective action, and reinstatement of all given names and living estates to all the Americans those properties naturally belong to. The U.S. Department of Defense (DoD) is responsible for issuing correct identification cards owed to all these purportedly dead Americans under the Geneva Conventions governing peaceful civilian populations under occupation, and correct passports until such time as our states assemble and the United States of America issues its own passports again. 32 CFR Part 161 Section 161.4 Policy. A. It is DoD policy that a distinct DoD ID card shall be issued to uniformed service members, their dependents, and other eligible individuals and will be used as proof of identity and DoD affiliation. B. DoD ID cards shall serve as the Geneva Convention card for eligible personnel in accordance with DoD Instruction 1000.1 identity cards required by the Geneva Convention and all veterans at age 60 are entitled to a pension and medical benefits via the DoD, not the VA. We are not DoD personnel, but we are protected persons owed a correct ID from the U.S. military, and protection of our persons and property as well. To say that we are dismayed and disgusted by the hypocrisy, graft, greed, disloyalty, guile, deceit, necromancy, identity theft, false probate of living estates in violation of their own statutory laws and U.S. Supreme Court decisions, Scott v. McNeil, 154 U.S. 34, 1894, conspiracy against our lawful government in contravention of the constitutions that created and empowered these foreign subcontractors to exercise our delegated powers in the first place, would be a complete understatement. The entire dead baby scam is a plot so evil, so fantastical, so bizarre that it beggars all belief, and yet there it is, exposed at the London Winter Olympics, clearly tracked on the public records of these organizations, the largest identity theft and credit fraud scheme in the history of the world, all predicated on a fictitious genocide on paper and deliberate misapplication of our given names to our amniotic waste materials, substituted for the true owners of our earthly estates, the zygote and the living baby resulting from the unique zygote underlying all other claims from the moment of fertilization onward. It is an eternal shame that any church has colluded to dishonor the covenant between mankind and our Creator. Let it stand for the record that the Hospitallers, also known as the Knights of Malta, are the agents and principals responsible for the largest part of the implementation of these fraudulent records and the resulting false claims in commerce against our living estates. Let it also stand that they have been aided and abetted in these activities by members of the Roman Catholic Dominican Order, which has conducted an inquisition and religious persecution on our shores using the instrumentality of the IRS to prosecute millions of false claims in commerce against Americans. For this fraud and theft, the office of the Roman Pontiff, liquidated in 2011, is fundamentally responsible. We continue to hold the Roman Curia, the Holy See, and the Roman Catholic Church as a whole responsible for gross breach of trust in criminal self-interest. We also hold the British government and the British Crown responsible for their part colluding in this outrageous breach of trust and international fraud scheme. Let this also stand for the record of the entire world that all such bogus Sestuike vi estates are dissolved upon their discovery, together with their derivatives, and all beneficial intellectual and material rights, titles, and interests returned to the living people to whom these assets naturally belong. All municipal courts outside the District of Columbia must be shut down. This is a non-negotiable issue of our national security. These courts are being operated under color of law and are trespassing in violation of the Constitution of the United States. We, our states and people, do not intend to be involved in any commercial mercenary squabble between federal service providers, and we are not acquiescing to any bogus commercial claims or foreign administration of fraudulently created and falsely probated estates operated in our names. All subcontracting agencies of the municipal government are to be fully informed of their status and the personnel briefed concerning this fraud, so that every American however employed knows what went on here. All territorial courts are restricted to their internal administrative duties and such duties in admiralty as are strictly defined and intended under the provisions of the Constitution of the United States of America of 1789. The officers and subcontractors of the territorial United States government are hereby fully informed concerning this fraud scheme directed against their employers and benefactors the American states and people, and are called to perform their duties in good faith and to honor their obligation to support and defend our states and our people. Our government, the United States of America, is fully functional. We are aware of the worldwide conspiracy of corporate interests seeking to overcome the lawful governments of the people in every country. It is more than past time for the perpetrators of these schemes to be recognized for what they are: criminals and outlaws, intent on thievery, murder, and fraud. Anyone supporting these incorporated entities in their aims is an accomplice to this profound evil and part of the problem we all face. The Holy See is under demand to retask the IRS to process credit claims brought by the American states and people. It is also under demand to redirect all municipal employees to ensure cessation of all false commercial claims and improper probate administrations. Although the IRS operations were shut down in Puerto Rico, the same old evils are being perpetuated in the Northern Marianas Islands, the Ladones, the Islands of Thieves. We are not amused and continue our demand that all such criminal activities cease, that all false liens be released, and that no such trespasses against us continue. The British government is under demand to cease and desist all commercial mercenary actions on our shores and to end all collusion with the municipal United States government against the American states and people. This includes redirecting all territorial court personnel who are present on our soil to stop their trespassing and racketeering activities without exception. The territorial courts and administrators are required to observe strict interpretation of their boundaries and must cease and desist improper conscription of American medical personnel, licensing of American medical personnel, registration of American babies, and all other actions, procedures, and activities designed to steal our identities, unlawfully conscript our private assets, and otherwise trespass upon us. Anyone issued a birth certificate has been the victim of this fraud. The birth certificate is proof and evidence of unconscionable contracting processes being used to defraud American babies, literally in their cradles. Any American having such a birth certificate is exempt from commercial claims and is entitled upon declaration of their state national or state citizen political status to access the American national credit to offset all bills and presentments made against municipal persons or territorial persons that have been operated in their names. If you are not presently employed by the U.S. military or the Federal Civil Service nor serving in an elected or appointed political office of the territorial or municipal United States nor receiving unearned federal welfare benefits nor willingly and knowingly operating a federal corporation nor seeking federal asylum, you are eligible at this time to reclaim your birthright political status. Federal employees who quit federal service or retire will be eligible to do the same upon completion of separation. We are serving notice on the U.S. Department of Defense with this international public notice regarding the dead baby scam that we are non-combatant civilians who are owed proper identification as internationally protected persons and who are owed proper passports, too. We are in the process of assembling our States of the Union and have posted our will and intent as of September 9, 1776 and have reissued our sovereign letters patent as of November 4, 2015. Our government observes separation between church and state and guarantees religious freedom to all. American Indians and African Americans are under no presumption of servitude nor of obligation nor of any enemy status related to our government and are to be considered American state nationals like any other American born on our soil, equal inheritors of all natural and unalienable rights and blessings. If in view of the misadministration, bad faith, criminal activities, and false claims advanced in breach of trust, the Queen, the Pope, or the Lord Mayor desire to say one word against our directives to their personnel on our soil, they have had more than ample opportunity to disagree with our evaluation of the situation and they have failed on all counts to do so. Whereupon we accept their admission and acquiescence and direct Mr. Trump and the U.S. Secretary of Defense to begin operations to shut down the municipal courts preparatory to full reinstatement of the federal postal district courts we are owed and our occupancy of the state courts. We also direct the U.S. Secretary of the Treasury and the IRS to unblock the individual accounts owed to the United States of America and to every American state national who reclaims their birthright political status by public recording of their declarations and who presents a birth certificate in evidence of unconscionable contracting processes and unlawful conversion of their estate in violation of both commercial and international law. Each state assembly is validating and correcting the political status records of Americans who are beings in possession of all their natural and complete property rights and who are owed the guarantees of the constitutions and who are also owed access to the American national credit. Victims of this vicious scam are encouraged to come forward and to record their declarations of political status and to claim their given trade names and lawful estates. It is to the eternal shame of the Holy See and to the British Empire that any such situation exists and that average Americans are being imposed upon to correct the bad faith and errors of these subcontractors run amok on our shores and elsewhere throughout the world. It is also to the eternal shame of the bar associations, their members, and the judiciary that has aided and abetted the enforcement of this criminal fraud scheme to enrich and empower themselves at the expense of basic decency and justice. An almost equal share of blame is owed to misdirected federal agencies, including the FBI, BATF, IRS, FEMA, DHS, CIA, DIA, TSA, BLM, USDA, SEC, and others that have engaged in and acted in support of these institutionalized crime schemes designed to defraud, oppress, and control their hapless employers. These private federal agencies have been used to enslave us, so that the racketeering profits from their activities could be used to enslave others around the world, in a reprise of what Queen Victoria did in the 1850s and 60s, that is, to sell out and enfranchise the British people to raise money for the Raj in India. The people of the world have already said no to the Raj, to the Nazis, and we shall say no to any US or Chinese military hegemony dedicated to the same ugly principles of criminal injustice, greed, oppression, enslavement, immorality and deceit. The New World Order is nothing but the Old World Order, an endless repeated attempt to establish a global Roman Empire, an idea which needs to be put out of its misery together with its insistence on distorted musical scales, incorrect calendars, idolatry, immorality, abuse of power, and every other cruelty and stupidity that anyone can name. Clinging to the past only prevents us from embracing a far better future. Americans are invited to peaceably come forward and declare their proper political status and assemble their states of the Union. The United States of America will continue to work with the American States Assembly to ensure an orderly and safe revenue process and will continue to press for reform and correction of U.S. operations, proper identification of American civilians, issuance of credit owed to Americans, and overall restoration of our lawful government of the people, for the people, and by the people. All U.S. territorial and municipal employees, all U.S. territorial and municipal elected officials and appointees, all members of the U.S. territorial and municipal judiciary, all members of the U.S. Armed Forces, all members of the Joint Chiefs of Staff, all foreign governments, all participants in the United Nations General Assembly, all high contracting powers and principals are hereby given notice of the crime committed against us. This notice is provided to encourage your understanding and assistance as we address this criminality and enforce correction of the dead baby scam.